workshop for Duke Fuqua. My name is Selby, and I'll be your host for today. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you Natasha from the Red Pen. And Natasha, I'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself in a broader manner. But before we go ahead with that, I'll just quickly give a quick brief about this workshop today. Our next 45 minutes will be spent on the Fuqua essays, and we'll review some sample essays to highlight opportunities and some problems. So during the presentation, please post your questions into the Q&A tab, and we will answer as many questions as possible. So for everyone in the audience, we have two ways for you to engage. On your screen on the right, our primary source of questions will come from the Q&A tab. So you can also upvote questions that you want answered. And yeah, now I will turn it over to you, Natasha. Thanks so much for doing this.
Hey, thanks, LB. So I think there are some people who have joined me from my previous session, but for those who haven't spoken to me before, my name is Natasha, and I head client servicing for MBA admissions at the Red Pen. I work with individuals who are applying to global business schools. I specifically work with individuals who are applying to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton. I do work with a lot of people applying to US schools, and European schools are the next thing that I love doing. So one of my passions is really helping build people build a coherent narrative. So whether that's through essays, whether that's through really using their resume and their LinkedIn to really corroborate points that they want to bring out to admissions officers, those are elements of the application that I'm really passionate about and I love working on. And Duke Fuqua just happens to be one of my favorite schools as far as essays are concerned. And I'm really keen to get started with this. So, with that, let me move on to understanding the school. Now, I think the biggest part of understanding how you want to approach an essay is to understand what the school really wants to promote as a thought process, as an ethos, and the what guides the way they put a particular class together. In Duke's case, in Fuqua's case, they talk about nurturing leaders who are equipped to empower others, to bring out the strengths of others, and to really inspire teams and move teams ahead to solve larger problems, to really tackle real world issues and have a common purpose, to inspire teams to think about a larger good, a greater good. Now, when you think about this mission statement, you need to understand how it translates into the values that the school would like to bring out or would like applicants to demonstrate in their essays. And I've kind of broken those down into 9 values that you need to think about in different combinations through the essays that you're going to address. Honesty, responsibility, kindness, because again, there's a lot of emphasis on community over here, compassion, fairness, respect, and commitment, perseverance, and cooperation. So there's a human element to the kind of leader you want to become. And there's also, you want to be someone who's driven, ambitious, and really has their eye on the prize. So, bringing those elements out will help you understand how the school wants you to really go into this first essay. You need to remember that by the time the school reads your essays, they would have already gone through first your resume, your application form, and the information you provide there, and they would have gone through your letters of recommendation. So they already have a pretty comprehensive picture of who you are professionally. What was your career trajectory like? What was the chronology like? And they'll make certain assumptions about the choices that you've demonstrated professionally from the answers that you've given them across these components. Now, or what your recommender tells them as well. So now when you come to the short answer question, it's important to remember that they already have this perspective of who you are. So when you really get to the nub of what you want to tell them about your goals, Fuqua has given you a very tight word count of 100 words, which is literally a paragraph, to explain to them what your post MBA career goals are. So they're really asking you to look to the future. They're not asking you to talk about the past and about context setting because they have that already. So they're asking you from this point forward, what is it that you want to do? So they're asking you to talk about short term goals. They're asking you to talk about long term goals. They want to know how you intend to move from your short term goal to your long term goal. And most importantly, they want to understand that if plan A doesn't work out, what is your plan B? Now, you need to remember that for all schools, this plan A versus plan B is really an important part of how they evaluate your candidature. So whether they ask you this in an essay or whether it's asked in, an interview at a later point in time, they really want to understand how driven you are. And again, you cannot be driven by a position or a title or a industry that's lucrative, but what you need to be driven by is a sense of purpose. Because when you talk about your plan A, which is your primary plan of action, you will be able to talk about what are the problems that interest you professionally, and how do you want to work towards solutioning for them. If you only talk about your short and long term goals in terms of the designation you want to be at or the sector that you want to be at, and then you talk about maybe being a part of the C suite, doesn't really give them a sense of what drives you. So, talk about your short and long term goals with the context of the business problems you want to solve, and how is it that you view problems in the world. Because then, when you talk about the alternative path you want to take, it will give them a sense of how you still want to engage with the problems or the perspectives that matter to you in some manner. And maybe the path differs, but the goal doesn't differ. So that is very important to remember, because you want to keep that messaging very tight and concise. And the school really expects you to articulate things clearly in this essay. The next essay is the essay that I really love. It's a 25 random things essay. Now, in this essay, they really want to understand who you are. So the idea is that you give them 25 random pieces of information about yourself, and together those random pieces of information start telling them bits and pieces about your personality. They start understanding how you engage with the world. They start understanding why certain things matter to you. And even if something is slightly silly or slightly cringe, but it still gives them a very honest sense of your vulnerabilities and how you really engage with others in the world. The school is very clear that they don't want you to talk about things that would be mentioned on other parts of your application, specifically your resume. So they don't want to know if you won an award at work for performance, or they don't want to know whether you were, promoted at work. But what they do want to know is maybe other elements or achievements in life that may not be a part of your resume, but they still really think that they need to know about you to understand who you are. And a good measure of this is, if you were to take a printout of this list and hand it to someone, they should just say, yes, this is the person I know. And if they can't make that call, then you know that you need to work harder on it. Another piece that you also need to remember is that every point on this essay needs to tell them, why is this point important to you. Every point on that essay needs to answer the question, so what? Why do I need to tell them this? If your point is going to be something like, I love blue M&Ms, you need to say why it's important. It could be as silly a reason as, I feel they all taste like grape, which is, something that really drives me crazy. But you need to think about so what as an answer to every point on that bullet list, and you need to be able to articulate it. Create a mix of statements. So even if you're going to talk about the professional, it needs to be something, like I said, that's not on your resume. And if you're going to talk about personal, think about like important stuff that that really defines who you are. And that could mean different things to different people. Some of it could be really deep, and some of it could be lighthearted. It's fine, but again, my advice would be, tone down humor in this particular essay, because a lot of times humor can go wrong. It sounds nice when you say it, and it sounds nice when maybe you're talking about that point to someone who you have like a face to face interaction with. But remember, for a reader who's in a different cultural context, who may not understand language in the same way that you have written it, and who may not have the kind of context and background that you have, humor doesn't always translate in the written word. So I would be very careful about using humor in this particular essay. Also, another important point is, some of the points can have pictures on them. So if you want to include pictures in this particular essay, it's fine. I've had individuals use pictures to talk about like a really standout moment in their life when they met a celebrity, or when they really got something transformational as an award. It's fine, but don't overuse pictures. If you're going to use pictures, use it only for one point, or at the most two. What it should not look like is a photo album. So, if you start seeing the essay go that way, tone it down. And the last point is that there may be some points where you can reference the Fuqua community in some way. So maybe, you love the food in a particular area of your city, and you can end it by saying, this is like something that I'd really want to bring my Fuqua classmates to, and I really want them to experience what a meal is like over here, because I think it will give them a great context about my city or my country or my culture. So there are ways in which you can bring the Fuqua community in it, and you should embrace that if you feel that it's something that's relevant. Again, don't overdo it. Every point doesn't need to relate to Fuqua, but of the 25, if about three of them are related to Fuqua, it's not a bad idea.
Natasha, we do have some questions about like the short term and long term goals. If you want, I can bring them up
Oh, I
now. Or
see a few more questions as well.
yeah.
I'll just address one question about 25 things first. So I
Hmm.
think there's a question that should the 25 points have a theme, or should it really be random? It should really be random. We've had multiple conversations with Fuqua's admissions team. And the whole idea of this particular essay is that it needs to show a pattern in its randomness. So don't
Hmm.
choose a theme. Don't try and talk about only one dimension of your life or one very overly curated part of what you want to portray. Make it really random, and that's
Mm.
very difficult to do. We'll talk about it at a later point. I think another question we can take is about goals. I think you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So mhm.
Should I bring the
So I
most
think
one?
yes, you can.
Yeah, okay. So here's one. For someone pivoting into consulting, how specific they have to be regarding the short term goal? Should I mention even the industries I want to work at the consulting firm, or since hiring happens for generalist roles, industry need not be required?
So if you're I think some part of this might be it might be useful for us to understand the individual's background. But if you're pivoting into consulting, you should mention the kind of sector focus that you would love to have, or you could mention the kind of firms that you want to join, or the offices that you want to be a part of globally. The important thing to remember is with consulting, you need to talk about why is it that consulting is going to be an important short-term goal for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so if you can talk about what is it that you hope to learn by working with certain kinds of sectors, what is the knowledge that you want to pick up, or the strategic thought process that you will develop by working on projects, that's a good element to pick up. So if you have a short term goal in consulting, but say your long term goal is entrepreneurship or it's moving to the business side, your consulting stint needs to indicate what are the important skills, or what are the important problem solving abilities, or what is the important perspective that you will get by advising companies perhaps at different stages of their life cycle, maybe at different stages of growth, and also how you're going to collate those experiences and that experience to develop or refine your own strategic thought process. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that was important. And if you are referencing companies, not just in consulting, but in any field, ensure that you research whether those organizations come on campus, whether they recruit from that particular school. So that will be something that you can very subtly indicate that you understand what the school is all about and you've done your research.
Makes
But if you
sense.
do want more specific information for anyone who has goals related questions, or something specific about their profile, I would suggest just reach out to us on the link that we've provided in the chat,
Yes,
Selby, because
I
we'll be able to give more context in that situation.
for sure. Should I
uh,
bring
are there,
the,
yeah, I just want to check if there's any essay related stuff, because then we will come back to
there's one
larger.
more question about the 25 random things.
I also see one question about short and long term goals. So I'll answer the 25 things
Okay.
first. Can we include professional job related stuff? Yes, you can. But again, think about the kind of context you want. So if you were someone who volunteered to be the fire marshal, and you've helped people across, and you've actually been, a volunteer that's witnessed a crisis, that could be something you speak about. If you're on the fun committee, and you have a target where you do something nice for your team every quarter, or you're the person that everyone looks to for Friday night movie night, you decide the movie and you take them there. those are really fun things because it shows the team how you engage with the world, how you look at forming relationships with others. So if you're going to talk about professional environment, you don't necessarily need to talk about a great project, or you don't need to talk about your relationship with your manager, but you can talk about how being at work is an important part of who you are. You do spend a significant amount of your waking hours at work. So talk about fun stuff that you do, talk about things that really add to your perspective. You don't necessarily only need to talk about clubs. Maybe you're a part of a women in networking club. Maybe you're doing something for the company's CSR. Or maybe you just have like a sports committee that you're a part of. But really round out the perspective that they have of you professionally beyond your resume. I saw something about goals. While writing short term and long term goals, should we write about alternate goals also, if
Yeah.
not if
Uh,
also if not asked explicitly. So the question does ask you to talk about your alternate goal. So yes, you do need to, in 100 words, you're literally going to be have one sentence devoted to context setting at the most. Then you can talk about what your short-term goal is, because you want to talk about what you want to engage in, the solutioning you want to do, and then you talk about your long-term goal, and then you talk about the alternative career that you see for yourself. So the way the Fuqua prompt is structured, the short answer prompt, you do need to talk about the alternate goal.
Makes sense. Okay. Should we take any more, or we can go to the next one?
There's another question saying mentioning current students is appreciated or not. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's one last question before I move forward, which is about the 25 random things. I want to know what's a good example, like how random or intimate this list should be. And
Mm,
how long should it be? Like a maximum 4 sentence per point. I would say it needs to be a maximum of 3 sentences, not more than that. And it should take up not more than 2 to 3 lines on a sheet, because the overall essay needs to be not longer than 2 pages, and that's something that the school really expects you to stick to. So that's that. And how random or intimate this list should be, it really depends on your comfort. I would say a good way to start this essay is by maybe polling people who are very close to you, and if they can tell you something that they really notice about you, or something really random that they know about you, or they think about you when your name comes to mind, that's a good place to start. But I think then when you look at the pattern of points that you put together, get a sense of whether certain pieces are like standing out and not necessarily in a good way. That might give you an indication of maybe removing some things. So I
mhm.
would say that when you think about how intimate the list needs to be, that's more served not by a single point, but a pattern of all the points. So if you start seeing a sour note, just remove the point. Another good thing to do is to start with maybe writing about 30 or 35 points about yourself, and then looking at the points that you ultimately want to retain. I will warn you though that writing 25 things is really difficult. You will find yourself really losing energy by the time you write about 15 things about yourself. So this is going to be an essay that takes time to develop. It's not going to be an essay you can put together quickly over the course of a week. So if you haven't started writing it thus far, please do start right now.
Makes sense. All right.
Okay, so I think I'll move forward and then come back to the questions, Selby.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about the Fuqua community and you. That's the next essay. And again, what I've done is I've highlighted in red the elements of this point or this prompt that you need to have, first and foremost in your mind, right? So Fuqua prides itself on cultivating a culture of engagement. So that is the context setting that they've given you. And the context around engagement is that there's a wide range of student led organizations, there's opportunities for leadership development, there's personal fulfillment. So the way that the culture of the school is built, it focuses on providing you with opportunities to really engage with the school, its resources, and your cohort. So our student-led government, and again, that's an important thing to keep in mind, clubs, centers, and events are an integral part of the student culture and to the development of leaders. So the school really is providing these opportunities because they see it as a way for individuals to develop a well-rounded perspective, which will assist them when they look at themselves as future leaders. So, based on your understanding of the Fuqua culture, what are 3 ways you expect to contribute at Fuqua? First things first, you need to keep in mind that you need to have 3 very distinct ways in which you plan to contribute to Fuqua. So, a good way to think about this is think of your sense of purpose. Think about what drives you as an individual and as a professional at work, and identify common themes. You might find that there may be a couple of things that are really common across personal life and professional life, and how you engage with others. And good ways to think about is the way you engage with your peers, the way you help others, and the way if you see something negative, or you see injustice, or you see someone not being included in conversation, how is it that you really come to their rescue? How do you take action? And that should really be the themes that you develop, and then link to specific resources at Fuqua. So have a direction to the research that you are doing into the school and into its resources. Because again, the school doesn't really want to talk about only, doesn't want you to only talk about what is it that you're going to take away from the school, but they also want to understand how you will enrich the community by being a part of it and by taking action. So you're not going to be a consumer of knowledge, but you're also going to be someone who's action oriented, and that's what you need to demonstrate. I would say that 500 words is pretty generous for this essay. So it's a good idea for you to set about first, setting your context to your sense of purpose. You have an opportunity to talk about what matters to you. And maybe you can provide a couple of examples that will indicate how you engage with individuals, or how you engage with your sense of purpose outside of, the MBA program and up to this point in your life. Then you can center it around the three specific ways that you want to contribute to Fuqua. Have a paragraph for each way in which you want to contribute. And it's a good idea, again, given that there are multiple points that you want to cover, it's a good idea to headline what is it that you want to do, or how do you want to contribute to Fuqua, and then list the clubs, the resources, the events, the other activities that you're going to take on, and also think about how you're going to contribute. It's not enough to say that I want to engage with this club, or it's not enough to say that I'm going to volunteer with this club or this resource, but you want to talk about specific ways in which you can do it. The more specific you are about how you can contribute, the better it is, because it rounds out their idea of who you are and the depth of your research into the school. Are there any questions, Selby? We can accordingly look at this.
Not specific to this yet.
Okay. Again, I think there are a lot of questions around individual goals and applications to schools. Those are the questions that, if you want us to talk to you about them, please reach out to us separately, because those might be questions that we may not have time for. So I'm just going to go ahead. I want to talk about the mistakes that you need to avoid. I've already spoken about this briefly, but avoid using humor, or avoid using sarcasm, or avoid using callbacks in your 25 things essay, because it's very difficult for someone who's reading your essay the first time with a very neutral perspective to get a sense of maybe how these particular pieces are an integral part of your personality. And stuff like sarcasm and humor definitely doesn't land the way you intended to in a lot of ways, on a lot of the points. The second piece that I want to talk about is when you want to talk about how you want to contribute to Fuqua, you should avoid giving general facts and statistics. So if you're going to give a statement that says that maybe in X country, so many children are, they go hungry, and it is important to understand that this is the prevalence of a particular problem, this is the scale of a particular problem. When you kind of start building context setting that is very journalistic in nature, you lose an opportunity to tell them something about yourself. So, if setting context about a situation is important, you need to remember that it's not moving the discussion forward, and the amount of space that you allocate to a journalistic statement needs to be very, very minimal. I would say a sentence at the most, because then you need to talk about how you engage with the problem, what you do, and how you take action, and how do you drive impact. That is what needs to be the bulk of the essay. So I'm going to now move to the live essays, because I think we've set a lot of context about what matters and how you need to address these prompts. I'm first going to talk about the short answer essay, and there's an individual who has provided this particular example. But let's talk about again the key points: post MBA goals, first choice career plan, alternate career plan. And also, it's important to remember that they've said post MBA career goals with an S. So, yes, they do expect you to spell out your short and long term goals. Now, again, the primary concern that I have with this essay is that it's more than double the length of what they're expecting. And if you really want to know how much 100 words is going to be, it's literally going to be the first paragraph that I haven't highlighted. It's going to be that much space and maybe a sentence more. So that's all the space that you have. So, what I would advise this particular individual to do is they need to think about how much they want to do as far as context setting. The first entire first paragraph needs to be a single sentence, because what is important is really what he then talks about in following paragraphs: the long term goal and the post MBA goal. So you need to talk about the context setting that is just relevant to explain your short and long term goals in a single sentence, perhaps two, but that's also a lot of word space in a 100-word essay. You can maybe talk about the fact that here is the immediate problem, that I see in this particular sector. Here is, and this is the kind of business problem that I predict is going to exist over the next 10 years. That is a great context to set, because then you can immediately go to the immediate post MBA goal that you have. What do you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years? When you talk about what you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years, it needs to be super specific, because you need to talk about the kind of role that you want to get into. You can reference a couple of companies if you'd like to, and then talk about how you want to build out your perspective by working on certain key projects within those companies. After that, you move on to your long term goal. So I would say first talk about your short term goal, then talk about your long term goal, because your long term goal is a broader vision. Now, your long term goal in this particular essay is to get to a leadership position as a chief strategy officer in the energy giants like these organizations, where I plan to play a significant role in the smooth energy transition across the globe with an aim of renewable energy for all. Now, honestly, it's fine for a long term goal to be broad in its scope, but I feel like this particular goal doesn't give me a sense of the way in which you want to create impact in the long term. So I think instead of emphasizing leadership position and the strategic role that you want to be in, you need to talk about how long term you want to grow to lead X kind of teams, or you want to lead organizations, or you want to play a pivotal role in the way these organizations solve a particular problem, and how you're going to contribute your perspective built over years of working in your short term goal to build and create transformational solutions. But even if you're going to talk about transformational solutions, and in this case, it is energy transition across the globe, you need to give a direction of the kind of way in which you want to do it. So while schools will appreciate broadness, they will also appreciate you giving an indication of how you want to continue to engage with this problem over a sustained period of time. So just a little bit of specificity over here in terms of direction that you want to take will be more appreciated than you saying that I want to be in the C suite, or I want to be a chief strategy officer, because that is very role oriented, and you're kind of linking your ambition to an endpoint, which is a role or a goal or a particular title, which doesn't really sit well, because what the school wants to understand is the kind of long term impact you want to create. So think about it from the perspective of impact. After that, there is an alternate path, which is to join a consulting firm as a strategy or operation consultant post MBA to hone my problem solving and stakeholder management skills. I would say you talk about, if your ultimate goal is to be involved in solving, and you want to be involved in the smooth energy transition. You want to be involved in understanding the way clean energy works. So it would be a great idea if you can actually talk about, joining a consulting industry, but what are the kind of problems in this area that you want to work on? Maybe you will develop perspective by working with firms across sectors to solve their, or to work on certain energy issues or crisis or problems that the world is facing. And you can talk about it with a far more mature or developed lens, because then you can say that, by developing a perspective through the consulting side, I will still be able to work on my long term goal or long term vision, which is X. So, talk about the ultimate path, but give a little detail in terms of how your alternate path is going to equip you with the skills and the perspective to solve the problem that you really want to work on. So, that is what I'd like to say about this essay. I want to then move on to the next essay. Now, this particular example was 25 things, but what I've done is I have taken a sample of half the essay to accommodate it in the space that we have. But here is the question that I want to ask anyone who's watching. The whole idea of 25 random things is to get to know you, to understand who you are outside of your resume, outside of your professional and academic achievements. Every point of yours needs to tell the audience, which is your admissions officer, who you are, what matters to you, what is your sense of purpose, how do you form relationships with others, what matters to you maybe when you are sitting alone and have nothing to think about. But it's essential to give a very personal perspective. And therefore, like I said, each bullet point needs to have or needs to answer the question, so what? Why should I know this about you? In these 10 points, if you were to only read these 10 points about this particular individual, and say you were asked to make a character sketch about this person, what do you think matters to them? What are the chief parts of their personality that you get to know? Would you be able to answer the question, is what you need to ask yourself. So I'm a pretty adventurous person. I once tried to stand up paddle surfing and almost didn't return. Okay, maybe this is someone who has taken risks and may have learned something about it, but I don't know what that is. I would rather eat spicy peppers and cry than no peppers at all. Again, why do I need to know this about you? Are you someone who enjoys taking risks, or are you someone who does this because there's a certain adrenaline rush that you get? And it's okay to have a silly answer, but the idea is you need to be able to provide a little bit of context beyond the first sentence. I have close to a dozen cats that I take off on a daily basis. Again, great initiative. It might demonstrate the way you interact with communities, or about how you can't bear to see the suffering of the voiceless. And maybe you need to add that context so that this particular point lands really, really impactfully. My favorite fruit is mango, but I hate mango juice. Again, why would I want to know this about you is an answer that you need to provide. Maybe it's important because you give, whenever you have mango juice, you always choose to give it to a friend, or you keep a list in your mind of all your friends who love it, so whenever you get it, you make sure that you give it to them. So it's a great way to for you to showcase something about how you interact with the world, and you need to take full advantage of that by laying out that answer to so what for every bullet point. And if you're not able to tell something about a person by reading this essay, then you know that you need to start tweaking those points around. By itself, these points aren't bad, but they do need to answer that particular question. The third essay, or in this case, the second long essay, is based on your understanding of the Fuqua culture. What are three ways that you want to contribute to Fuqua? Now, I have highlighted in blue every point that you have mentioned that you want to contribute to Fuqua. So there are three very distinct points, and that's great because you've answered the prompt. You've acknowledged that there is a certain instruction given, and you have followed that instruction. That's very important. However, I think what you need to do is think about really effectively headlining these points, because the story that you've told is super super impactful. You've spoken about how you interact with problems on a daily basis in the country that you're from. You've spoken about the initiative, so there is, you are action oriented. You definitely have a very strong sense of purpose, and you don't merely make assertions, but you act on them. All extremely important qualities, and all are qualities that will really reflect well, because you are someone who the school will see as an individual who will be engaged in clubs and communities and initiatives that benefit others. But I think the thing that you need to remember is effective highlighting and headlining will make these points more effective. So let me give you an example. um, at Duke, and again, don't say at Duke, I would say at Fuqua, because you're joining the Fuqua School of Business. But at Fuqua, I'm eager to channel this passion into the Stop Hunger Now initiative, contributing to packing thousands of meals for distribution in areas affected by natural disasters and political crises worldwide. Great point, super specific, detailed, gives me a sense of what matters to you. Um, I think in this particular case, what I like is you've kind of linked it, and it follows on from the preceding paragraph, which tells me exactly or sets context as to what you do right now and how you then want to continue doing it at Fuqua. So it's great. But in this case, what I would do is I would make the first sentence, which is not highlighted, more specific. Because right now you're saying, I am confident that Duke is a perfect fit for me. You're pitching your candidature to the school, so they know that. So don't use real estate on the essay to repeat that particular line. You should say that, Duke is a school that values and then you can maybe talk about the values that really resonate with you. You don't have to repeat the mission statement, but you do need to talk about the fact that, it's a school that really gives students an opportunity to follow their passion, or to form clubs, to participate in decision making in a manner that goes beyond the classroom. So many effective ways to say it. So explore saying something meaningful about why the school really attracts you, beyond saying that it's a great place for me, which they know. And then talk about, this specific thing. Then you can talk about the fact that as an undergraduate student, you've participated in these activities. You've focused on building a sense of community, of improving community life, and of really helping those in need. And then you talk about how you want to continue to do that at Duke. Great initiative. You can have maybe a little word space if you want to add a second resource to it. And it's fine to have two resources in terms of how you want to contribute as per a theme, but this also works. The second way in which you want to communicate is, you mentioned that my strong inclination towards teaching and mentorship aligns perfectly with the Fuqua to Duke program. Again, a very specific statement, and then you provide context. You said this program offers a direct avenue to refine my coaching, leadership, and interpersonal skills by mentoring undergraduate students pursuing business careers. I would say over here, there's a repetition. So, if you want to talk about teaching and mentorship, and then your next line again talks about refining your coaching, leadership, interpersonal skills by mentoring undergrads, make it more efficient. Make it a single sentence saying that you'd want to refine your skills at this particular program or this resource, and then say that, how have you kind of done this in the past. In this particular case, it will be important to talk about how you have affected impact, how have you created impact by following this particular inclination of yours, by contributing your time and effort to being a mentor. You've provided an example over here. So you've mentioned that you once mentored a young lady in one of the high schools I taught at. But I think for me, what really stood out is that you can headline this better by saying that, what I contribute so many hours a week, or I contribute my time, because what is important to show the school is that there is continuity in your engagement. So don't start this example by talking about one person that you mentored at one time, but talk about the fact that you have mentored continuously as part of a national youth service that your country gives you an opportunity to access. And you can then reposition the example by saying that, one example that really stands out for me is this young lady that I mentored, and she went on to do XYZ. So positioning it this way, also you talk about a singular impact, but you're also indicating the larger scope of your activities in this particular area. um, Again, you say that my commitment to Africa's development is unwavering, and how growing up in Nigeria, I witnessed the harsh reality of widespread poverty, prompting my determination to drive positive change. Now, again, there is an opportunity to make this paragraph really impactful. There's a slightly, again, I always call this a journalistic approach, because when you start talking about statistics, when you start talking about facts and figures, you need to remember again, this is an essay which is about you and your ability to contribute. So don't look at valuable real estate going towards painting a larger or a broader or a really colorful picture or contextual picture. You need to talk about things that, they could probably, the school admissions committee would probably be knowledgeable about enough about global affairs. They could probably Google a lot of the statistics. But what you need to remember is, you need to talk about how in Nigeria you witness widespread poverty. You may have consistently seen it, and you were driven to take action. And you can say that, growing up with opportunities, myself, what really hurt me, or what really saddened me, was there were so many individuals in my country with great potential who did not have access to maybe education, basic education, or they did not have access to higher education, or they were unable to look at, get like linking high school education, their high school education or their high school diploma with a job. So you can then kind of set a little more specific context, and then talk about what you did in order to mentor them effectively. Right now, this is a little light on the kind of actions that you took. And I think in the third example, you need to talk about what you've done for it. And it could be just, it is a much larger problem, and maybe your contributions may not seem as impressive in light of the scale and scope of the problem, but it's important to say that I do take action, and I am driven to take action. Because then when you talk about taking up a leadership position in the Business in Africa Club at Fuqua, not Duke, how are you going to collaborate with like-minded individuals? I think it would be great for you to, and I'm sure you've done your research and you've spoken to someone, and maybe an office bearer from this club, but I think it will be important for you to think about specific ways in which the dialogue or the events or the resources that the club will provide you with access to is going to help you think about working towards a strategic solution or creating widespread change. And you need to think about a direction that you want to take, because right now this is a great initiative, but it needs to be a little more directed so that the school knows that you've thought about this problem with the depth that it deserves, and that you definitely are committed to solving this problem. Because it doesn't hold water if you only make an assertion, but it's very, very impactful if you say, I want to do something about it, I've researched what I want to do, and here is my immediate priority. So that is really the structure that this particular essay needs to have across the three ways in which you want to contribute.
Awesome.
And with that, we can come to the Q&As. So I think let's look at some of the Q&As. And Selby,
Yes,
I'm also going to, you know,
we can maybe
rely
start
on
with
you.
the upvoted ones
Mhm.
quickly. So we have like another 4 minutes left. So, can you please share your insight on leadership development program as a short-term career goal?
This is a question where I'll need to know your background,
Rounds.
Anika.
Okay, go to the
So,
link.
because it would be very difficult to give a very, without context an answer. So I would say use the link and reach out to us. You can scan the QR code, or you can just look at the link that we've pasted in the chat box,
Mhm.
and just reach out to us, because I think with a little more detail about your profile, it'll be possible to give you an answer that really, will add value to what you've asked me. There was a question, Selby, and I'll just quickly tackle that.
Mhm.
Someone has asked that how strict is the word count? Can I stretch it to say 775 words? Now, there's two perspectives to it. Is the school going to look at your essay and count the words and say, oh, it's 755 and it's not 750? No, not necessarily. And the schools are typically fine if it runs over by about, like, say, about 10 words odd. But it's also important for you to realize that when the school asks you to follow a specific direction and you specifically don't follow that direction, it's not really a good look. And this is a gray area. So my sense would be, it is possible to make an impact in 750 words. We help applicants every year do it. So I would say try and not stretch it. That would be the answer that I would give. And the second important thing is that it needs to be, they give you two instructions: 750 words and a two-page limit. So both should not be, should definitely not be broken.
Makes sense. Okay. Um, Let me go check other questions. There's one about the 10 random
Yeah,
things.
I'll just go back on that particular slide. Sylvie, would you be able to help me? Yeah,
I'm
okay.
s-
I'll go back to the slide now. Okay. I'll maybe do a couple of them. So I love watching basketball games, and my favorite moment is the game where in the game is when the everyone, like all the teammates, come and hug the person who, I'm sorry, I'm not a basketball fan, so I'm struggling to find the words for
Yeah.
so when someone makes a basket, everyone comes and hugs them, and I think that's like the best part of the game. Tells me
Mm-hmm.
something about you and about what you value. Or I'm so scared of dogs, but I like puppies because I just enjoy the cuteness moment. I would restructure this to say something like, while I'm scared of dogs, I still make an effort to feed them or to reach out to them, and I help puppies whenever I can, because I feel like that is a way in which I can sensitize myself, or I can get over my fears. That is
Mm-hmm.
a great way to position this point, because it tells me that you are someone who doesn't let your fears rule you. You make a conscious effort to get over your fears.
Mm-hmm.
um, Not restructuring a point, but if you're putting a quotation in the 25 things, please don't use quotations anywhere. in an essay or in a 25 things. I want to put this point across very strongly. It doesn't matter which school you're applying to. Don't use a quotation. You're using valuable word space to tell individuals that I don't have something important to say, but here's what someone else said. Not a
Mm.
good look. Please don't use that. Another way in which you can reposition something, photography is my secret talent. I love capturing life's moments. This has a lot of potential. You can say that I love photography, it's my passion. And in every event, whether it's friends or family, I'm the person who takes the photographs of everyone and sends it to them after the event. That tells me that you engage with people, you take pictures of people and places, and you love capturing happy moments, you love capturing things, and more importantly, it's a way for you to engage with more people. So these are ways in which you can really make those points more meaningful.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Awesome. Uh,
I think there are a couple of other ones.
Natasha, though, I think our time is,
Oh, it's up. Okay.
yeah. So for those who still had questions, I'm just putting up the link once again. You guys can uh,
Just fill
ask.
your details, reach out to us. Another way in which you can reach out to us is by scanning the QR code. But an easier way to do this will be just to fill the form at the link that Selby's posted on the chat. And you can give us a lot more context about your individual case, which will be easier to, for us to answer.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a ton,
Great.
Natasha.
Thank you so much, Selby. It was a pleasure interacting with everyone. Thank you.